Welcome to Tales Tomorrow. I am Morrow, your storyteller for today, and with me I have some more RPG horror stories. I'm finally feeling much better to be able to get into VR, be able to use my hands. I've missed your hands. How you been without me? Hope you're being okay. Anyway, I'm glad to have hands again, and we have my book again. Speaking of my book, I got some RPG horror stories for today, so let's get into it right now. Feeling stuck and don't want to become the problem, actually looking for advice. In a campaign that's about 7 sessions in, and during that time about 5 different players have rotated out, only 3 of the original party remaining, including myself. The DM had vented pretty hard about how personally he takes it. At one point he said that if one more person leaves, he is nuking the game. Whoa. Okay, hold on 1 second. Pump the brakes here. I feel like there's already something wrong if you're 7 sessions in and you had to rotate out 5 players. 1 or 2, completely understandable, you know, maybe the time doesn't allow for them. But 5 players been rotated in and out and only just the 3 original remain? Forgive me if I'm wrong to assume, but that sounds a little much. And for the DM to vent to you, I mean, yeah, I understand it's not, you know, the most pleasant thing to have players just constantly in and out and everything. But for the DM to vent it like that to you, if they want to like shut the game down or just like restart the game or just start a brand new game or just don't even want to run a game, they don't really have to. Anyway, I guess let's continue to see if we can learn more about this. My problem isn't that I'm not having fun exactly, but that I'm struggling to find my voice. Spend most of the game with my mic off because I'm an anxious ball of yarn that doesn't really know how or when should I be speaking up, and when I should just let the rest of the party have their fun. Even when prompted directly, I freeze up and I don't know what to do. I've been in other groups where I didn't have this issue nearly as bad, but for whatever reason, this one's been crushing me. Probably because I don't really know any of them, and the cast keeps changing every other week. The DM is great and does what he does well, but I'm not a good fit for this game. Or any game right now, probably. How can I drop out doing the least damage possible? Honestly, I think you just gotta break it gently for the DM, but it's one of those situations that I feel like it's like a band-aid basically. No matter how easy or hard you go, at some point you just gotta let it rip, you know? You can try to break it gently to the DM and say, hey listen, you're great and all, but I'm not really cool with people constantly rotating in and out. Can we have maybe like a fixed group of players that we can just commit to? Maybe just the original 3 that I decided to stick on, unless the original 3 includes the DM as well. It does make sense not to be fully comfortable with constantly people rotating out every single week, so you constantly introduce to strangers and you have to basically kind of readjust yourself every single time. Every week there's a new player coming in because they're rotating for somebody that wasn't a good fit. I feel like that's kind of a problem where maybe the DM has specific requirements, or maybe they're running a kind of a niche game that people are joining in expecting one thing but it turns out to be the other, so they just kind of drop. I feel like there needs to be a talk about the bigger problems and bigger issues going on behind the scenes. I guess my first question would be is why are people dropping out so soon? Why are they just rotating out every single week? Is it one of the situations where DM explains them, oh, it's this kind of game? They join in expecting one thing, they get the other and say, sorry, that's not my kind of thing. Is that what's going on? Is it the miscommunication on DM side to the players about the expectations? Or is this the unfortunate scheduling issue where people join in and like, oh, well, I unfortunately don't have the time for it. Or maybe they're making up excuses why they can't join in. Is the DM great as a person? Or are they great as a DM? Or both? Because if people are just dropping like flies, I kind of feel like maybe there's something going on behind the scenes that's just not going to work out. The best thing to do is just to be honest with the DM and just let them know exactly the reasoning behind it, and that you just don't feel comfortable having a bunch of random people rotating in and out. At the end of the day, it's not your fault the game is not working out. It's just not your cup of tea. Something about it is just not okay. Something about it is just not good, and you'd rather play with somebody else or play a different type of game. Or you could try to stick out and see if things improve. Maybe they will improve, maybe they don't. But if you genuinely don't want to be there, just be upfront and let the DM know. Whether you do this gently or like really rough, it's like I said, it's a band-aid situation. Whether you go easy or hard, that thing just gotta come off. You just gotta pull the ripcord, you know? Good luck with whatever you decide to do. I'm gonna get to the next RPG horror story for today. The worst game I've ever played in. This story takes place during my junior year of high school. I met a friend in my photography class who invited me to their game, and I joined in during the next session. There were a lot of red flags I should have seen at first. This was my first time ever playing, so I'll let it slide. There were about 7 to 8 players total. Ugh. And my DM played a DMPC, which the story seemed to center around. Ugh. I joined the campaign a few months in and was in the campaign for about 4 months before it ended due to a disorganization and some personal business my DM was going through. A few stories I remember off the top of my head. The campaign was extremely railroady, to the point of me basically tuning out because I knew that I didn't really have any agency. If your players don't have any agency over their characters, what's the point of really playing the game at that point? You're just literally a participant, an audience member. If you're not playing as a player, you're an audience member, and that's not a good thing to do. Don't have your players be audience members. In the dungeon, we came to a room with a chest in the middle. I knew it was likely a mimic, so I suggested throwing an item at it from a distance, which was basically just denied by my DM. In that same dungeon, the DM's girlfriend, not playing a character but co-DMing sort of, had a bunch of rolling tables that felt really out of place. We were in the prison underground being controlled by an archfey, and we randomly encountered some merchants in a room. During a traveling session, the DM and his girlfriend set up an encounter specifically for the DMPC. I just had to sit there and wait for them to finish since it took place underground through a tunnel my character wouldn't been too small to fit through. Wait, so your character had to actually sit out of an encounter, a whole fight, just because of that? Couldn't have used like, I don't know, couldn't it just be a DMPC uses enlarge reduce to reduce it to size so you can join part of the encounter or something like that? Just why don't you just leave a player out of an encounter? The whole point is for them to participate. Though I feel like at this point DM and the co-DM, the girlfriend, are probably just creating the campaign for the DMPC and their own little NPCs and not for the players. I'd say that's the hunch that I'm getting here. So player priority, probably not the most important for them. We barely had any chance to roll beside occasional persuasion or perception checks. And the worst thing, in the 4 months I played at the table, we had combat twice. The game was every Saturday and I only missed a few sessions. I understand that some people just don't like combat as much as their games, but I was playing a barbarian. It was hard to roleplay at all with that many players. A few months in, I decided I wanted to try DMing with a few of the people from the campaign. I learned very quickly that basically no one knew how to play D&D. I had to teach them how spell slots, subclasses, backgrounds, or how combat worked. And they were so used to railroading that when we got to less linear part of the game, they were somewhat confused as to what to do without strict guidance. And the final kicker, the DM from the other game, was one of the players in my game. Were they also confused without the railroad? I'm actually genuinely surprised. Also, that sounds like a disaster. Imagine having players that literally don't know what the features are, backgrounds do, what the feats do, what the subclasses are capable of. They only have combat twice, and they literally have no idea what the hell's going on, and they're just kind of sitting by, not even role-playing, they're just being audience members, rolling persuasion or perception like once every blue moon, which is just insane to me. I have a game full of new players, and a bunch more friends literally never played D&D 5e, just ever, never touched D&D, never even touched TTRPGs in general. This is their very first experience, so I make sure that I go through with them to make sure they understand what the features do, what the subclass is, what the class says, what kind of things they need to do in order to build a character they want to build, whether it be for some sort of optimization or for roleplay reasons, and help them pick out feats and stuff and set them up with backgrounds and make sure they can have actual agency, actual rolling dice and interacting with the world and doing the cool stuff in there. Because I want to have my friends share the hobby with me and actually be able to roll dice together so we can have some good fun. But this is a disaster. Your players literally don't know what's going on and you're not even guiding them. I feel like, I don't think it should be DM's sole purpose to tutorial new people through it, but if you do have a lot of new people throughout the game, wouldn't you want to teach them a little bit about it? Like, let's say for example you're playing Pathfinder 1st Edition and you have a lot of people that never touch Pathfinder 1st Edition. Would you A, want to help them figure out and learn Pathfinder 1st Edition as they play through the campaign with you? Or B, just throw them in and hope they figure out eventually? I don't know. I mean, some people are quick learners and maybe they can pick up stuff on the go, but if you have a whole party that literally don't even know what those subclasses, I feel like that's a deeper problem there, and I think it stems from the DM focusing too much on the DMPC. Anyway, good thing you took over for it because I feel like that was much needed. Honestly, you know, that's actually a good lesson. If you have a really bad DM that's basically doing nothing and just making the game all about the DMPC and stuff like that, start your own game. Get a bunch of people that want to play with you and just learn together. That's probably the best way to do things, honestly. I highly recommend it. Anyway, let's get the next RPG horror story for today. DM forced romance between child PC and adult. Now, I'm definitely gonna get into this story, but let me just preface this. If I have a hard time reading through this, it's because of this. Look at this, a strong amalgamation of text. An entire slab, almost like a slab of meat, except if it was text. Just a whole chonker. So yeah, if I have a really hard time reading through this and going through this properly, so I apologize ahead of time. But anyway, let's get to the story. My long horror story is this. Trigger warning for PDF file format. I don't really use Reddit, don't judge my formatting please. This was originally for a YouTube comment, I just thought it would go well here. Started playing with my dad and brother young, early teens, maybe 11 to 13. My dad DM but didn't love it, so when we found out the new neighbor played D&D and that their dad was a very experienced DM, I think maybe he's been DMing like 30 years, we started a new game with him. I'll note here, he was allegedly straight and I was a teenage girl. I flip-flopped between a lot of characters as I went through my edge phase. I wanted to have a dark trauma character, but didn't like how they were too depressed to do the chaos that I wanted to do. Until finally, I settled on a cheery gnome fighter character, who was basically 8. Ooh, that's a recipe for disaster. Having characters that are underage in a game should only be done if everybody at the table is perfectly cool with it and understands some things just shouldn't be done, especially some very monka things shouldn't be done. And I understand it's like your neighbor and stuff, but I mean, I don't know. It feels like when every time I go on Twitter, there's always some sort of like a teacher's been exposed with some sort of sexual misconduct with one of those students, and it's just, honestly, it's kind of unsettling. Genuinely, it's kind of unsettling to think that your next door neighbor could be a PDF file format. The point I'm trying to make is that it's a little bit monka when you kind of start making a character that was basically underage, and it's just, I don't know. It's a recipe for disaster and for bad actors to do bad actor things. It's just easier to just be like, actors of age, moving on. I love playing her. I could indulge in all the chaos I wanted, and she was a lot of fun. Her parents were gone, so she had a semi-maternal relationship with her giant badger mount, which was really sweet. We awakened the badger after a while. At some point, she got into a situation and died, as did her awakened badger. We decided to get their bones back and reincarnate them. When we did, the badger turned into a human. My character became a half-elf, but she was still practically 8. The badger behaved like she was in 30-ish. Then the badger human developed a crush on my 8-year-old character, courtesy of the DM. Why do you have their badger mother, surrogate mother, turn into a humanoid and start developing a crush on their surrogate child? This is extremely unsettling. I was uncomfortable with this because I was still trying to outgrow the homophobia I was raised with. I was a closeted asexual and didn't want to roleplay that. And the character was a child, which is a very valid statement. The character is a child. Leave the children alone. Yeah, even fictional children. Just leave all the children alone. Just leave all the children alone. Let them be. After a few sessions of everyone at the table except the DM, especially me, giving signals that we were uncomfortable with this, he ended the session with the badger kissing my character, non-consensually. To recap, the badger was an adult. The badger was an animal. Neither I as a player nor my character consented to this, and the session ended right after, so I never had a chance to respond with any of the absolutely nots I wanted to. I got another question. Considering you were underage, I'm assuming there was probably some sort of like a... I want to say that maybe you should have had an adult present, but I guess you did have an adult present. What I'm assuming happened is that maybe the adult that you're playing with seemed fine on the outset, and that's why maybe they gained the trust of your parents, so the parents thought, oh, they don't need no supervision, I'm not going to join for the game. But honestly, in this situation, it probably would have been better if one of your parents or relatives or whatever join for the game as well, just to make sure nothing weird is happening and just kind of keep an eye out just in case. You never know with strangers. Even your closest neighbor could be really weird, extremely weird. It's unfortunate the reality that we live in, but you got to be looking out for everybody out there, people. It is terrible. All of us players responded with horror, but he seemed to be pleased because I guess he thought he got us emotionally invested in what we're reacting or something. Also, I should say I was 16 at the time. After that, I literally gave her a crush on a figment of her imagination, which again, closeted asexual, just trying to figure myself out. I didn't want to do that, so that it wouldn't happen again. Also, was specifically a boy because I was working through internalized homophobia. Though a couple years later, I made her daughter a character sheet, and she's trans, so I did work through it. I think he also had an NPC hitting on his 9-year-old daughter's character, but she was playing an adult, so we didn't notice. Even if the character... Okay, another thing I want to point out. Even if you have characters that are adults, still at the table, you have minors. You need to have themes that are appropriate to them, which means any kind of adult or mature themes, you toss out the window immediately, you weirdo. The themes of romance is one thing, but you gotta have somebody that's mature enough for that and can handle it. Not a 9-year-old. Don't just... It's just... Oh, God, I feel so slimy. Your dad and your daughter, who is a player in your game, is a 9-year-old. Their character is an adult, but they are not an adult. They are a child. You shouldn't... You don't do truth, just don't do any sort of weird romance stuff when it comes to underage people. Just don't do that. Just keep it simple, PG. You go out, do a quest, slay goblins, win reward, voila. Move on to the next quest. This is making me feel highly uncomfortable. Ugh. If it was any other situation where things were kosher, I honestly wouldn't be making comments on it. But the way this guy's been pushing everything from the badger mother falling in love with her daughter and stuff and forcing it on people. We have a guy here that's basically an old dude that's running a game for a bunch of minors, enforcing such themes as your surrogate badger mother is now a humanoid and she's in love with your character, who is an 8-year-old, and the player is also a minor and is forcing some sort of a kiss and a romance that the player doesn't even want. Nothing about this is, I feel like the word kosher is probably the most accurate thing. If not kosher, let's use wholesome. There has to be wholesome themes in this situation, particularly because you are playing with a bunch of underage people. You shouldn't be having any of this weird themes come up. The weird forced incest romance stuff is just not okay. It's not okay. This is a game run by a sick person that's just trying to force the weird fetishes onto minors, and it's not okay. I feel like somebody should have been there to supervise the game just in case, because I feel like if there was like a mature person there watching what's going on, they'll probably be able to call things out and stop it immediately. But unfortunately, we did in this situation, and it's extremely unsettling and it's really upsetting. Seriously, leave the kids alone. Just leave the kids alone. I'm gonna try to get through the rest of the story, but I just feel really uneasy. Though his daughter was very uncomfortable with it. Same, actually, with my brother's character. There were a recurring villain who tried to seduce his character, which he hated. We teased him about it instead of standing up for him, though. He's a year and a half younger than I am, and I was 16-ish when the 3-year campaign ended. My dad was also playing with us, and I don't remember any weird interactions happening with his character, though he didn't roleplay as much. Wait, what? Your dad was playing with you, and he didn't see all the weird stuff or the clear red flags with you? There are two realities that exist. One, the way that's described as this guy being a freak, and I guess your dad being blind to it for whatever reason. Or two, it was completely different from the way you're describing it, and it was a lot more, I guess, kosher, wholesome, whatever word you want to use, than it's being made out to be. Unless your dad is also a weird freak, I can't imagine the fact that some adult would be present that wouldn't notice an obvious red flag of all this going on. Particularly the part about, hey, my mother's in love with me and I'm 8 years old and she tried to do a forced kiss thing. That is, call the police. Call the police. Anyway, he's in jail now for messaging a 13-year-old from elementary school he worked at. And I'm really uncomfortable thinking about the times I was alone with him as a minor. I was even uncomfortable then, actually. I just thought I was being weird because of how women are conditioned to be wary of older men. Rightfully so, as it turns out. Well, at least he's in jail. That's good. Very unsettling. A lot of things are very unsettling, and I still feel a little bit weird about you mentioning the fact that your dad was playing with you and didn't notice anything weird and stuff. Unless your dad is like an anime harem protagonist that just dances a brick or something. Anyway, this is a lesson that you should probably avoid people doing weird things and call out really sussy bad behavior. No matter how old you are, if something seems off, you should probably tell an adult that is going to be responsible, an adult that's actually going to take action, because this is not okay. This is not okay. This could have turned into a really bad situation, honestly. I don't even want to think about it, honestly. I don't want to think about it. I'm gonna just end this here, put some Windex in my ears, hopefully it cleans out my brain a little, and then I'm gonna continue recording, I guess. So yeah, stay away from weirdos. And with that, that's gonna be all our stories for today. I want to thank you very much for watching, and thanks so much for being here. If you like what I do, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. Also, if the RPG Horror Stories ever goes down, or if you want to submit your own personalized horror story, email is down in the description below. I'll see you again in more Tales tomorrow. Bye-bye.